the test, I am not going to show you what the brass and bullet combination was until after we look at the graph. So I have 5 of one kind and 5 of another. I have no idea what's going to happen, but let's see what these graphs look like. Number 2. And I will tell you that these first 5 are my, for lack of a better word, my control group. Even though you see some erratic numbers here, this is technically the control group, and it'll make sense when you see the end. And this is a very small, simple test, but I was just kind of curious after a conversation I had with somebody as to what this graph would actually show me. So there are the first 5, okay? Now I am going to save these. So let's save all traces, and we're just going to call this one test control, and let's save it. And now we are going to clear all plots. Now here come the actual test ones. All right, here we go. All right, that's interesting. All right, number 3. That one was definitely up there at the end. You'll see the seating pressure on these is kind of all over the place. Anywhere from 41 to 117. All right, so you guys want to see what I was testing here? Let me save this first. Test. All right, so here we go. Here is what we were testing. If you look here, these top 5, this was our control, and the bottom was the actual test. Now, these aren't going to get fired. There was no powder, no primers. I just wanted to see what the graph would do, what it would show me about the difference between a perfectly round neck and a highly disfigured neck. And where I'm going with this is we will ultimately be trying to determine how much does concentricity of the neck, whether it's from the bushing or an expanding mandrel or a gauge pin, really affect the consistency of seating the bullet. So all 10 of these were simply full length size. They were using a, what did I have, a 310 bushing in them. No expander mandrel on any of them, nothing other than just sizing and the bushing. And so it's really interesting because if we look at the graph, and let's head over to that. Well, before we do that, take a look. What I did is I took pliers and I actually smashed the mouths pretty good. So, I mean, these are way more than you would ever encounter in the real world. And I was simply using the bullet to seat itself and expand the neck. So that's what you were looking at on the graph. So let's go over to the graphs here and take a look. The control group. Now you can see these, were perfectly, within reason. They were perfectly round based on coming out of the sizing die from the bushing alone. Pressure was anywhere from 75 to 129. So if we look there, a spread of roughly 50 something, 54. So not bad on that front compared to what I know we're going to see on the next one. Relatively, angled curve here. Not a lot of step in on the initial seating. And again, the bullet was doing all the expanding work. So it is interesting to see this curve. So while we have some discrepancy up here, it is a relatively controlled curve this way. Let's take a look at the ones that I called crimped or smashed or whatever we want to call it here. The crimped or smashed or, the mashed mouth one. You can definitely see there was more work being done down here. This initial jump is obviously the bullet straightening out the mouth of the brass. And then you can see it's a little more fluid at that point, right? So in here, it's very fluid between everything. And then there's definitely some discrepancies up here, which I can only assume are because of the differences in the case mouths as it finished seating itself with more or less pressure in different places. Still very interesting to see. Obviously, a much, much wider force at the end, anywhere from 41 to 117. So, 70 something there. Really, wide variance on that final seating pressure. But just interesting to see. Now, this next one, I actually put both of them overlapping. So let's take a look at that. This is the combined of both the 5 rounds over here, you can see, versus the 5 rounds here. Now, these here that started around 0.2, those are the control group where they had the round mouths. And then over here near the 0.3 is the smashed mouth one, the crimped ones. And so that part's interesting. But what's really fascinating to see on this graph is how this intersection on both the crimped and the uncrimped really have a pretty good intersection for the majority of the seating. And then up here, obviously, the majority of the higher ones are going to be from the control group, and the majority of these lower ones are from the uncontrolled or crimped group. So there is definitely a disparity here, but if you remember, this 129 was actually one of the control group. This 117 was part of the crimped group, and but we didn't have anything below whatever it was, 90 or something. I can't remember now. For the control group, whereas the crimped ones, we know we went, from 40 to 117, so much, much wider. But it is just really interesting, trying to approach, I was talking to somebody last night, and they sort of gave me this idea to start down the road of testing a few things. And so just to see a simple test like this and how it graphs out really starts to make you think about the processes. Now, ultimately, I will get to a point where we test this with live ammunition. And, the third component is how it prints on paper, right? So we have the brass prep side, which we will be controlling with different, necks, whether it's, smashed or controlled or expanded. And then we will have the graphing portion of it. And then we will have the how it prints on paper portion. And I think by going down this road, we might actually learn something. So this is step 1, and we're going to keep having some fun with this stuff. Thanks for watching. We'll talk later.